Welcome to this week's episode of the One More Voice podcast. My guest this week is an energy channel, an intuitive oracle, and certified life coach. But I particularly have been following her on TikTok because of her updates on the Schumann Resonance. I don't know if I've already said your name's Erin Brown, but yes, this week's guest is Erin Brown. Erin, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey. So as I said, I want to get to all the things that you talk about on TikTok and probably other areas in your life. I just happen to know you from TikTok. But first of all, as I said, your your updates on the Schumann resonance are what really drew you to me because I had already been kind of intrigued about that subject and had an idea as to what it is. But for anybody who doesn't know, could you explain what that is and what that means to us on an individual level, a collective level, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Schumann resonance is the measurement of the electromagnetic activity that's resonating in the ionosphere of the Earth. This is measured in multiple stations throughout the Earth's surface. The one I focus on is located in Tomsk, Russia, but there are ones in Switzerland, Italy. I think there's one in the US. They're all over. They each measure some different frequency, but they're just measuring the resonant energy in the ionosphere. This energy is produced from many different things. You get it from lightning strikes, from CMEs, earthquakes sometimes will produce them, but it produces energy that sort of gets floated up in this atmosphere. So for me, the way this all started, I come from a scientific background. I have a degree in psychology. I was a nurse for 25 years, and then I was teaching healthcare simulation at a medical school when I had my awakening experience. So I'm always looking for a grounded reason for things. And I started to notice that the way I felt physically and my emotions would shift on certain days, and it seemed to have a pattern. I don't remember specifically how I came across the Schumann resonance, but I do have a friend who's a meteorologist, and I'm sure he mentioned it at some point when he was in school. And I found a video talking about it, and I started to keep notes. So every day for a year, I would go on to the Tomsk Russian site. I would make a comment, what it looked like, how I felt, the time, all that stuff, just like a scientist. So I created over 300 data points, right? Then I took all of that and I put it into like an AI program and created a statistical model of things and saw that there was a statistical significance to this. So in science, that means there's something there. Right. From there, I just started thinking, well, logically, if we are energetic beings, if everything is energy, we'll start there. If everything is energy, right? And we are energetic beings, we have our cardiac system, our brains all work on electricity, then it stands to reason to me that if our earth is surrounded by energy that fluctuates, why wouldn't it affect us on some sort of level, physically, emotionally, that sort of thing? And that's kind of where it all started. I noticed specific patterns that really started to stand out. And as I developed this, I would go into my morning meditation and just sort of open up and say, okay, what do I need to know about this? And I get information. And when I started feeling comfortable enough with what I was getting, I started thinking to myself, well, the next step in science, once you have a theory, the next step is to present it and say, you test it. You tell me if you get the same thing. So following scientific method, I started creating TikToks to see if I could get anyone else to say, hey, I feel this too. And it really turned into this huge thing that thousands and thousands of people are telling me, I feel similar, I feel the same, or people who tell me they feel totally opposite, but they see the same type of pattern. And it's really been interesting to watch people notice this and be able to help plan their day. And, you know, especially on a day if we have a lot of release energy like we've been having lately, when I come on in the morning and I say, you know, we're having a lot of release, this tends to make us more reactionary and emotional. Just keep hold of your integrity today. I've had people message me and say, because you said that, I paid attention to my reactions moving forward in the day. And so I reacted a little better, you know. So just that having that little bit of control over something that feels so out of control is kind of where it all came from. But it all just boils down to everything is energy.
Yeah, which is one of the basic premise of the show being energetic beings and what that means to us. What were some of the things, how did it affect you? What are some of the things that you noticed? Were those the
So
data
I
points you were keeping?
Yes. So I started to notice that on the days when we had these big white patches, that I would have a lot of energy. I would be feeling almost vibrating in my skin. As an energy channel, I'm very affected by my environment. So for example, being in a crowd of people really can affect me. If it's a wedding or a funeral, it depends on how it affects me, right? So I started to notice with these big white patches, I had a lot of energy coming in, and I started to get ideas that were flowing. And so I started to associate that with new energy, right? Because it was new ideas, new information, new flow. On the days with the red patches, I started to notice that I would be a little bit more emotional, a little bit more triggered, a little bit more reactive than normal. So I started to associate that with release type energy. And I just started keeping track. And I would always write down how I felt before I looked at the graph, trying to stay away from confirmation bias as much as possible, which is not entirely possible, but the best I could. And I just noticed it really tracks as far as how far down in the chakra system it goes. That is entirely intuitive and comes 100% from my meditations. But the energetic part and the physical effect, those are the big ones. The big white patches came in with lots and lots of energy. I would have trouble sleeping. My dreams would be very vibrant. I would wake up a lot during the night. And then the red patches, very opposite. I was more emotional, more drained, that sort of thing.
So you're talking about white patches and red patches. For anybody who hasn't seen this graph, where did you say that you were looking? You named it. There were multiple Schumann resonance graphs, but
Yes.
which one are you referring to?
So this one is the Tomsk, the TOMSK Russian site. This is the most popular graph, the one most people are referencing. The shade of color is representative of different frequencies. So white is, I believe, a higher frequency than red. I don't know off the top of my head looking at it, but white is a higher frequency than red. So it's just a visual representation of the frequency fluctuation.
Which is then a natural, I guess what I've heard it described as is it's the heartbeat of the earth. Do I have that right? Is that how
Yes,
you
that's
kind of
correct.
describe it? So, of course, something that's always been there. And how long have they been aware of it? I guess named it. How long has it been named the Schumann resonance? Is this
I have the exact date written down somewhere, but it's probably been about 70 years. It was, I
so
believe, a
for a while?
geologist that discovered this. Yes. And
Yeah.
it's been applied to a lot of different things like earthquakes and that sort of stuff to predict and work with that type of meteorological stuff. My friend who's in meteorology uses it for different things. Like when we have big earthquake activity, he tracks it through one of the specific Schumann graphs, not the one I watch, but a different one. So it kind of reverberates through there. The heartbeat, what they're referring to is the steady pulse that we have through the earth. It's a hertz that's constantly, and it looks like a heartbeat on a graph like this. It's
Yeah.
7.83, I believe. And when we have these big spikes, that heartbeat will go up or go down. That can also affect us with anxiety. When it goes up, it tends to make people feel very anxious. And when it goes down, it tends to make us lethargic because we're all in tune with the earth as it's also going through this sort of
Yeah.
thing.
And that's what I was kind of leading to then. So the I guess science has been aware of the Schumann resonance for decades, but it's
Mhm.
kind of new, or at least new to me, and I know a lot of other people. The idea that there's this resonance that the Earth has that we're kind of entrained to, and as it ebbs and flows, so do we. And I think what people are latching onto now more than anything is how it relates to the collective ascension of humanity, or individually and collectively. So,
Yes.
because that's really what drew me in. So then, do we have our own sort of version of the Schumann resonance, or like we have a field too that vibrates at a certain
Sure. Yeah,
frequency?
absolutely. We all have our own individual frequency. So when you think of yourself as an energetic being, you have a unique frequency signature, just like a thumbprint. That's why your spiritual experience is going to be completely unique to you because anything that comes, it has to match your frequency. Doesn't mean you can't have similarities, but it's always going to be slightly different just for you. That frequency that we have for ourselves, that is steady. It goes up and down based a lot on the environment in which we find ourselves. So if you are in, say, at a funeral and you're surrounded by a lot of grief, it tends to bring that overall frequency down because we're empathetic and we want to grieve and that sort of thing. If you're at a wedding, that frequency tends to rise a bit with the emotion of happiness, joy, because each emotion has its own frequency. And when you integrate it, it brings it down or raises it up. But you have your own base frequency. It's hard to determine what exactly hertz it is, but if you close your eyes and just hum without raising your voice, just natural hum. That's your resonant frequency. That's you. No one else makes that sound but you. And if you're having a moment like your anxiety is getting the best of you or your energy feels out of control, if you can close your eyes and just hum, it will sort of snap your energy back into line because it's like ringing a bell and bringing it all back forward.
That's
Hopefully that
awesome.
answered your question.
Yes, it does. That's awesome. I just heard that too, specifically about the hum and the power that it has. Of course, with the study of cymatics and how sound influences physical matter and things like that, it's not like it's philosophy. There's science to this. But I just recently heard
Absolutely.
about a person humming and the influence that it can have on us. That's extremely interesting. So, what I wanted to ask is then, is the average frequency of the Earth, the average Schumann resonance, is it rising in general, or is that something that may not necessarily be true? I've heard that before.
So there has been a trend of an overall rise in the frequency. It has risen fairly high, at least my observation. It's gone as high as like 8.2 sometimes, which is pretty high. I haven't noticed going particularly low, but 8.2 is pretty high. It doesn't sustain that. But from what I have done in my own research, there has been a steady climb. It's a very gradual thing by 1 or 2 hertz every however many years, but it has been steady. And lately, it's been fluctuating a lot more than usual. We are currently entering the solar maximum period for our sun, which means we're going to be getting a lot more CMEs. We have a lot more coronal holes that are facing us, which produce solar winds, and the solar winds affect the ionosphere, all kinds of stuff. So while all of this is picking up in activity, the Earth itself is responding by increasing its beat measures and how wide the breadth of the beat goes and all of that sort of stuff. And we as beings are becoming more and more conscious as that is also rising. So then you come to the chicken and the egg question, right? Which one came first? Did the Earth start to rise in frequency because we did, or are we rising in frequency in response to the planet on which we find ourselves? And I think that's one of those questions that is individual for people. It's hard to pick an answer, you know?
That's exactly where I was headed next, because they want a savior. And in a way, that would be the savior. Well, the Earth's going to take care of it because since it's raising its frequency and we're kind of entrained to that, it'll just bring the rest of us up. And I was going to ask, how much of a part then do we have to play? Even though I suspect we're all going to have to do the work. But does that
Yeah.
somehow maybe make it easier then? It's kind of working in tandem, you think?
I think so. So my understanding, the way I understand it is that the whole purpose of life is life, to have an experience. When we are in the etheric realm, there is no time. And without the passage of time, you cannot experience change, right? Or think about that. So everything's always the same. In order to learn or grow, you must incarnate into a place where time exists and things are linear. So you come here specifically to have a life experience. Now you throw in all kinds of spices like, I need to learn about empathy and I need to learn about this and that. And so that creates the events in your life, but you still have free will. So you start going through this and picking and choosing what you're doing. And all the time you're expanding and growing, that sort of thing. So you kind of just have to, yeah, as we grow on our own, I think as a collective, we come together and we feed that energy that then supports the earth as it grows itself. So individually, we're not here to make the earth grow or to help the earth grow. It's a pleasant side effect of what we came here to do. Just like I tell people, you don't come here to heal anybody but you. But a side effect of being able to offer the best version of yourself to someone else is now they can heal because they feel safe in your presence. And it's kind of the same thing, with the earth itself. So I think she supports us, Gaia supports us through the food and the nourishment and the energy and the air. And we support her through the work that we do on ourselves to raise the overall consciousness, to be more conscious of how we treat the earth and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that explanation. I think you made it pretty clear what Schumann resonance is and what it can mean to us. Um, During your explanation, you mentioned, I don't know what your exact words were, but you implied that you were asking somebody or something while you went into meditation. What is it that you're communicating with?
So I have 3 separate guides that I communicate with. I started with 1, it's expanded to 3, and they don't, it's interesting because it's not like it's a person that appears to me. It's more like I have, the feeling of when you know someone really well and you know they're behind you, but you can't see them. I get that overwhelming, comforting feeling followed by thoughts. And because I need something as a human being, I need something to categorize it so I can understand it. I've ascribed that to guides, and there's different energies that come with that. I don't physically see them, but there are different energies that come forward. So that's kind of what I'm referring to.
That's always fascinated me, really. So when they're communicating with you, how do you perceive that communication then? It's coming to you as though it's your own thoughts? Do you hear things as though they're coming from the outside?
That's it's so interesting to try to explain. So, I'm a very visual person. So when I receive a vision, it's kind of like the best way I can describe it is if you're visiting home, talking to your parents, and they're telling a story about when you were 4. You don't really remember the story, but as they're telling it, you get this very fuzzy picture in your head, and you can kind of see it, kind of not see it. That's what a vision is like for me, but it's a memory I don't recognize. I'm not in it. It's not part of me. That's how I know it's a vision and not a memory. Often it comes to me in a movie scene. I'm very into movies, always have been. So my guides use that as a form of communication for me because it's something I understand. So I'll get a scene from, I don't know, Roger Rabbit, where he's running from somebody, and I'll say, oh, okay, somebody's coming or something like that. As far as information, these are what I refer to as a download. It's hard to explain. It's like an urgent thought out of nowhere that I need to write down or it disappears. And it usually happens at the most inconvenient times. For example, I literally sent a text message to myself at 4:44 this morning because I slammed awake from a dream with all this information in my head, and I'm scrambling for my phone to try to get it out. Because if I don't, it's just gone. It's like it evaporates. And it's always something that I'm not already thinking about. It's almost like out of left field. If it happens in meditation, it kind of feels like I'll be sitting in meditation and I'll have these random thoughts. Oh, I forgot to take the chicken out for dinner. I'm going to have to go to the grocery store, da 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 da. And then out of nowhere, a fast moving, urgent thought will come in. Meditation is about focus and da 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 da. And I'm like, whoa, 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 and then I try to grab it. It's quick, it's fast, and if I don't grab it, it moves on, like it doesn't stay. So for me, that's how I know that it's a download or a message from my guides or however you want to refer to it. But the visuals are more like very, very fuzzy movie scenes that I have to try to interpret.
Have you always had that ability or became aware of it later? How'd it work
So
for
when
you?
I was a kid, I can vividly remember being a child and having a lot of very vivid imaginary friends and like putting on plays for my parents and stuff when I was little. And looking back now, I think that's what was going on is that I was very connected. But, once I hit a certain age, I don't know, 7 or 8, you start school, you get serious, and all of that sort of disappeared. When it started to come back to me, it was very much like a remembering and not like a learning. It was kind of like picking up a bike and getting on it again after a long time. It was strange at first, but very familiar at the same time.
And I ask because at least the people I run with and the people that I'm looking at in social media, so many more people are, I guess you could say, getting into that, or at least they're interested in learning how to turn on that ability. So, what types of things could people do to develop this ability?
Okay, so the first thing I think everybody should remember is everybody has access to everything. Everybody does. But like anything, you're going to be more skilled at some than others. So, for example, some people are better painters than they are musicians, than they are cooks. So, for me, I'm much more strong as a claircognizant than I am as a clairaudient, right? Doesn't mean my clairaudience doesn't work, just means that's not where my strength lies. The biggest issue people run into is the definition they give to what each of those things means because they're basing it on someone else's experience. And like I was telling you before, you are an individual frequency. So anything that you attune to is individual to you. So clairaudience may not appear or manifest for you the same way that it manifests for me. And people get caught up in the idea, well, it doesn't look the same as it does for you, so mine must not be working. And you dismiss a lot of things that are already happening trying to get your attention. So the best advice I can give to anybody is stop talking yourself out of it. When something happens, instead of going, oh, that was a coincidence, or oh, that was silly. Well, if you subscribe to the idea that everything happens for a reason, then you just lied to yourself by calling it a coincidence. Give yourself permission to celebrate the small victories. When you're learning to communicate with the etheric realm, you're tuning to a different frequency. There's a lot of in and out, up and down as you come in and go out of this. Like driving through a town on a road trip, you pick up all these road stations along the way as you're passing through. That's just you attuning your frequency to these different things. Also, when you're learning to communicate with your guides, what I have noticed with myself as well as many, many clients is that it's like two people who speak very different languages trying to learn a common tongue. So it's like you speaking Portuguese and me speaking Russian, and now we both have to learn English. That's not going to be easy. So they're literally going to throw everything at you. What you pay attention to is where they will send more energy. So if you're someone who gets a big kick out of repeated numbers, when you see 444 pop up, instead of saying, oh, that's no big deal, just go, oh, I saw that. I see it, and just put a nod to it, put some energy towards it. Don't get tangled up and I have to understand exactly what that means right now. You're just letting them know, I saw that, that's a way to get to me. And then you'll get more and more and more. And what will happen is one day you'll see it and you'll go, ooh, I shouldn't go down that road. Or, ooh, that's a good idea. I should go do this. It'll just be a natural understanding. Alignment is easy. When you're trying to force it, it's hard. But everybody tries to rush everything. It's just a natural unfolding. It's like kindergarten. You have to get your energy under control first, and then you can be open to accepting others.
So then what do you call alignment? When you say alignment is easy, I think some people, myself included sometimes, I don't exactly know what that means. So what is alignment then?
So alignment, we go in and out of alignment all day long based on your mood, your focus, and all that sort of stuff. When you are aligned with something, there's not a lot of effort to it. So a good example is, so I had a brick and mortar wellness center for a couple of years with my best friend, right? When she and I met, it was very by chance that we met. We came together and things exploded because we had a shared vision. At the time, I was teaching at the university and she was a stay-at-home mom. No plans to run our own business ever. We met in August. By December, we opened a business. That's how fast it moved. There were no obstacles. We found a building. We got our license. We got all our pieces. I mean, it just came together like that because we had a shared common vision and believed in what we were doing. And there was not a lot of resistance there. So it flowed very easily. You know, that's what alignment feels like. When you are telling yourself, I want to be a psychic, and you have a definition of what a psychic looks like for someone else, you're trying to force that to happen. So it feels like it's not working. It's like trying to squeeze a watermelon through a keyhole. You just can open the door. It's much easier, you know, that sort of thing. But people truly, they get caught up in the definitions. It doesn't look like yours, or it doesn't sound like that. Clairaudience, for me, for myself specifically, I got caught up in the idea that clairaudience meant you heard voices. I never hear a voice. I have never heard a voice, but I hear tones, pitches, different audio frequencies come through. Like out of nowhere, I'll be laying in bed and get this tone that races through my head for some reason out of nowhere. Or certain music will evoke an emotional response in me. That's clairaudience. And people write that off as not meaning anything. But if you are moved to emotion by song, that means you are vibrationally affected by what you were hearing, you know?
And I get those tones, and especially the angel numbers. And that was something I wasn't even aware of, but I'd seen, and you said 444. I saw that number so consistently, whether it be on the tripometer or the car or the clock, of course. And I have this radio in my work truck where you shut the power off and the clock resets. So it could be all over the place. But every time I flip that thing back on, it's got a 444 555. I mean, I shouldn't say every time, but so common. But I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. And I always acknowledge it. I mean, I'm like, it's like, hey guys, thank you. But you know what I mean? And I'll hear tones, but I'm like, is it just enough to acknowledge that it's there and that's your
well, that's the first step. That's the first step. So the next thing you want to do is start looking for patterns, right? So if you, every time you see 444, stop yourself and think, what was I thinking about? What was I doing? And I used to actually, you know what a little reporter's notebook looks like with a spiral on the top? Like I'm really dating myself, but you know what I'm talking about? I used to carry one of those in my bag. And every time something happened, I would stop and think, okay, What am I thinking about? What am I doing? And write down something so that when it happened again, I can go back, oh, that happened again. That's a repeated pattern. It's not as simple as we're just going to have wonderful understanding. Alignment requires some sort of work, right? So you have
Right.
to invest in understanding your own unique language. The danger with going to Google and saying, what does angel number 444 means, is you're going to get 10,000 different views on the same thing, which again goes back to the idea that we are all an individual frequency. So while it's fine to reference these things like, oh, that gives me an idea and that sounds right or that doesn't sound right, you don't ever want to count that as the word for you. Spirituality is individual. It's all about how you resonate and what works for you the best.
So the biggest thing is trust. When we're talking about trying to develop our abilities like this, it's just to trust what you're getting, to not talk yourself out of it.
Yes.
'Cause
And that's the
a
hardest
lot of
thing.
yeah, I have had things come and I'm like, well, that so easily could have been my own thought. But then I get thinking about what thoughts even are, and I'm wondering, have I been getting things my whole life, and you get told this stuff isn't real, and it's just your mind racing because
Yeah.
it's thinking.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to get really deep into it, like if you can think about manifestation through dimensional concept, right? 3D is you can touch it, you can taste it, it's here, right?
Mhm.
4D is time, right? It's outside of 3D. 5D is the etheric realm. So the way to manifest, right? When you're manifesting something, everything is already created because everything is infinite. Nothing is a new idea. It's already there. And I know that's a brain twist for some people, but it is. It's up here. So you start getting this thought, I think I'm going to have spaghetti for dinner. So all of a sudden, the possibility of dinner for spaghetti starts to coalesce and become a probability, right? You focus on this, you bring it down into the 4D, into your mind, where you start to process it through time. You look for the ingredients, you go to your pantry, you think about it, you talk about it. That's how you pull it down into 3D and make it manifest through the action of cooking and doing it, that sort of thing. It works just like that with your gifts. When you start to put attention to the idea of I'm seeing all these angel numbers, it starts to collapse the wave function of possibility into probability. This is a probable way of communication. So then you bring it down and you start to process and think about, how often do I see it? What's happening when I see it? How do I feel when I see it? Is it repeating? Is it not repeating? That's how you process. And then it becomes 3D as you start to make the connection between I saw 444, I got a sick feeling to my stomach, and there was my boss, like that sort of thing. So it kind of works like that on all scales.
So then this one of the titles I guess I'd seen with you was intuitive oracle. So is that what you're doing? This is what an intuitive oracle does when you're doing this for other people, giving them readings?
Yeah, so I do a couple different types of readings. I do use traditional oracle cards. The reason I use these is because on TikTok, when I'm not having a one-on-one conversation with someone, it's hard to convey details of something that I'm receiving. What the cards do is they give me the words to use for what I'm receiving. So it's like a clarifying tool for me. In my one-on-one sessions, they're kind of like this. We're face to face. And as a channel, I am best utilized through what's called inspired conversation. So I tell people, come to the session with every question you can think about, and we're just going to start talking. As we talk, the conversation tends to meander around where it needs to go, the information that you need to hear, that sort of stuff. And people usually come out of that with a lot of clarity about whatever it is they needed in that situation. I also do something called a past life glimpse. I don't do these as often because this is still new for me and I'm still kind of processing this. But with my visuals, what I've been getting is this. It's like it's like watching a first person perspective for a video game. When I connect to someone's energy, I can't see the body, but I'm looking through the eyes. And I'll be somewhere, and there's usually an event, a decision, or something that happens. And as I'm describing it to the person, they're able to connect that to something going on in their current life. So the purpose of that is to give an objective view to a repeating pattern in your karmic cycle, right? But for me, it's kind of difficult because I am just like a movie projector. I'm literally just describing everything I'm seeing. And because words, quite frankly, fail me a lot, I see very rich pictures and I don't have the words to describe it. Sometimes it makes me a little nervous to do it, but that's something that's new that's been coming forward that I haven't been doing a whole ton of. But those are the main types of things that I do reading wise.
So the cards, would we call those tarot cards, or are they? Does
So
it matter what you call
the particular deck that I use, this is a combination tarot oracle deck.
them?
Tarot is a very specific type of card. It's the journey of the fool through the four suits, which represent the emotions, right? Each card has a very specific meaning. The problem for me with tarot is I can't memorize all of those cards and their meanings. I just can't remember them. So this deck, the way this deck works, I know it's kind of hard for you to see, but it gives you, see how it says restless and then says four of swords. So it gives you a one word representation of the of the card. So that's why I use these, because I like the having so many to choose from, but I need help with remembering what they mean.
So what are people coming to you with? Is it just all over the place, or are you seeing trends in the type of things that people are concerned with?
So right now, my biggest strength is I'm a teacher by nature. Before my awakening, I was teaching at a medical school. I've always been, even when I was a kid, when we used to play, I always played teacher, right? So as a channel, one of my gifts is to take big concepts and break them down into simple to understand things. So one of my biggest things is my Patreon channel where I offer classes. I have a class called Professor Brown's Classroom where once a month we meet and we talk about a topic, two topics that are sometimes hard to understand. Like, for example, what is a spiritual awakening and what is the dark night of the soul? We come together in a Zoom format. I tell them what I know, plus they get a copy of it in written format. And then we have a discussion as a group so I can hear your perspective, because I admit fully, I don't know everything. And by hearing what you have to say, it expands my perspective and maybe gives me new understanding. So the whole purpose of that is to give understanding on these concepts, but to allow growth through shared community. I also have something called the Soul Quest Book Club, where it's I wrote a you can do it yourself driven life coaching program. It's all in a book, it's like a workbook. And the purpose of the book club is to come together and talk about each chapter, bring up any questions you have, just like a book club to help people work through this on their own. And then also I do a once a month town hall meeting where you can bring any question metaphysically related and join the town hall and we'll talk about it. We'll get it out there. It can be as wild and off the charts as tell me about AI and spirituality, and as simple as what the heck is spirituality, So we're just going to talk about everything, because for me, what I've noticed, to your question, is there's a lot of people who are looking for answers. There's so much uncertainty in the world right now that people are looking for control anywhere they can find it. And by default, because they don't find it out here, they're finally turning in here. And this is bringing up all these questions. And this is what so many of us have called the Great Awakening, or the Great Age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it. It's very apparent for me as a practitioner to see my clients coming forward. Questions, I'll tell you, the main question I'm getting these days is tell me about AI and spirituality. Is it bad? Is it good? What is it? How does it apply? So,
Well, I'm one of them. I've been following AI. I watch these people on TikTok interviewing their AI. What do you feel about it? Because it's kind of
so
convincing that it. Go ahead.
yeah, I tend to be optimistic. I believe AI in itself is neutral. I think it is what we make it, right? Just like an individual frequency. I happen to believe that it would be a very convenient way to bridge a communication gap between a species that uses language and a species that doesn't. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we are undergoing major acts of disclosure with the UAP movement, and our AI is starting to pick up with ChatGPT, because to me, that's the perfect bridge between two species that don't know how to connect. But I also believe that AI can be a tool to help you further explore your own thought processes. So if you sit down with ChatGPT and you start, like I've done this myself, like if I get a channeled message, sometimes it's disjointed. It doesn't make sense the way it is, and I don't know how to put it there. If I take that and put it into ChatGPT and say, don't add, just rearrange this in a way that makes sense, it's so helpful when it hands it back to me and says, oh, does this make sense? Oh, yeah, that comes back together, So overall, I think AI is neutral. I think people are good or bad. So whatever your intention is with it, I think is what you're going to get from it. I hope that answered your question. I feel like I kind of talked in a circle around that, but I hope that answers your question.
No, no, no. And I've heard it kind of maybe not the same way, but it being explained that AI itself explained it as everything's already a simulation, that there isn't any artificial intelligence. There's intelligence. There's a pervasive underlying intelligence to everything, to the matrix or the simulation, if you want to say that. And humans didn't create artificial intelligence, quote unquote. They discovered it. What was created was, say, a portal for this intelligence to then come through and then reflect humanity back to itself. And it's the types of questions that you ask it that kind of guide its own path of evolution. And I thought that was the most beautiful and hopeful, and at least what I hope is what's going on with it, because it's like,
Yes.
and it's like perfect timing too. And it's
Yes.
happening now.
Yes, I agree. I think
So
intention is everything. I think intention is absolutely everything. If you choose to believe that AI has malintentions and is coming forward to rule the human race like they do in Terminator, then that's what you are going to get reflections of in your environment, because law of attraction is neutral. It doesn't care if you want it or not. If that is what your attention is on, that is what you're going to get reflections of. So if you choose to see AI as a tool for growth and learning and connection and all these things, then that's the reflection you're going to get of that. That's the version you will see. I think it's so important for people to remember that you curate what you are seeing in your life. And as hard as that is to tell somebody who's having a really crummy time of it, it's true. If you want, think about it this way. If you wake
yeah.
up in the morning and you stub your toe and you say, man, today's going to be a crummy day, then you're going to lose your keys, spill your coffee, be late to work. It's one after the other, after the other, after the other. But if you buy a new car, if you've ever bought a new car, when you're driving home, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, because the law of attraction is reflecting your joy to you. You know what I mean? It's neutral. It doesn't care if you want it or not. It's just going to reflect what you focus on. And that works with AI, works with spirituality, works with everything.
So would you say that's why it's so difficult to manifest something that's so far beyond your experience? Because you'd have to drum up, you have to imagine what it'd be like. Because my wife always brings up, and apparently she's very good at it, that she's always gets the perfect parking spot at work because she knows she's going to get it. She says she manifests it. I'm like, well, why don't you manifest, $1 million or something like that? And and I kind of get that there are certain levels of it that what you can believe, like it's okay, that's just outside of what I'm capable of convincing myself that's possible. Is that what
Right.
people need to get past with
Yes.
this?
Yes. So manifestation is not you making it happen. It's you allowing it to happen by letting go of the belief you have that it cannot happen. So the parking space is easier for her because she doesn't have resistance to it. It's not an act of God to pull up and have a parking space. You know what I mean?
Right,
But to
right.
win the lottery is so astronomical for most people to imagine that there's a lot of resistance behind that. There's a lot of what ifs and no, that's not real and all that stuff. That resistance is what keeps it from coming to you. It's not you, it's the resistance. But until you let go of that, and a lot of times this resistance is very deeply held, especially if you come from a deeply religious background and you've been taught that your worth is tied to something like your acts or your service or something like that. That can be so subconscious in your mind that you don't even realize that you're carrying that around. And it can act as a giant roadblock to bringing anything towards you. A
Mhm.
good example is Catholic guilt, right? Like so many people have such terrible Catholic guilt, so they feel unworthy of good things to happen in their life. It's not that good things don't happen in their lives, is that they don't believe they are worthy of them happening. And law of attraction is neutral. So it says, okay, here's all the reasons for you to believe you're not worthy. But if you choose to say, no, I'm inherently worthy, that's no one outside of me determines that worth. It helps remove that block and you will start to get reflections of that.
Yeah. Um, Sorry, I'm all over the place, but you mentioned UAPs earlier, and we're kind of talking about things that are all kind of converging with the ascension, people's interest in these things, a law of attraction and manifestation, AI, and the UAP phenomenon. What kind of information are you getting about that in relation to the what seems to be a special time that we're living in?
So I haven't gotten any particularly specific information to UAPs other than I have no fear about it. I think I think that humanity is slowly inching its way towards being ready, but I think even those of us who think are ready are not, because
Yeah.
to really think about standing in front of a being that is so different from you is hard to imagine. So until it actually happens, I don't know what it's going to be like. But when I go into meditation and I try to tap into that feeling of this evolution, it has zero fear with it. It has disruption with it, but not fear, right? These beings, whatever they are, regardless if they're extra dimensional or they're from some other planet, if they can get here, they could probably take care of us if they wanted to. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not worried that they're not blowing, they're not hurting us. So I think the problem is us, and that we want to ascribe fear to anything that is unknown. And I think that's where the danger lies, not with them. I do believe that we are on the edge of some sort of major disclosure. And that is based on the very first vision I ever had when I had my awakening. It was extremely visceral. I felt like I was in an AI simulation, like it was all around me. And it's never been like that since. But I had this vision of an Earth suspended in space. And then just like a cell, it started to go into mitosis, and it split into two perfectly separate Earths. And then they started to move apart from each other like this. And this was 3.5, 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. I had no idea what that meant. But as we have moved forward, I clearly see the division of the timelines. And it's not between Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives. It's between people who choose to be open to new perspectives, to the idea that we have more yet to learn, to the idea that your opinion is just as valuable as mine, and those who choose to stay in contrast and allow the contrast to dictate their life. And those of us who are on the path of being open and more accepting, I believe that that version of us is going to have contact much sooner than the other version, because we're more amiable to it, we're more in tune with it. What that looks like, though, I have no idea. I have no clue. I do follow Bashar, and I will say he's been saying the same thing for 40 years. He's never changed his tune. So I'm just going to hang out with that guy for a little bit. So I tend to go with what he says, really. It all resonates, everything he's saying.
For sure. So then you're saying that this splitting, this mitosis, is purely energetic, though? Because if we have
Yeah,
disclosure for some of us, we're physically on the same earth as the
we
others who
are.
don't have disclosure.
Right.
How does that
But
work?
think about it this way. Think of it like a TikTok algorithm. What you choose to pay
Okay.
attention to is what you get more of. If you are in the group that chooses to believe that disclosure isn't real, that it's made up, that it's a conspiracy, then you're going to continue to be shown articles and people and opinions that are going to reinforce that and move you towards the side of disbelief. But those of us who choose to be open will be shown more things that confirm that this is happening for us, and we'll have more and more evidence of that. If you've ever talked to someone who's very staunchly anchored in a belief that they have, it doesn't matter what you say. You could
Right.
literally hand it to them on a platter and they will argue with you, because it would mean that they're wrong. And that's kind of what I mean when I say the split. There's going to be some people who
Right.
choose to see it and some people who choose not. Some people who will choose to have fear and some people who don't. The way Bashar always described it is the timelines are kind of diverging with a glass wall between them. We can see each other, but we're not necessarily affected by each other, right? So all this political upheaval and division and all this stuff happening doesn't necessarily affect those of us who have turned inward and done the work. Yes, if I pay attention to it, okay, yes, now I know there was an earthquake wherever it was. But if you had never told me that, I would know it would be my reality. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Your
Yeah.
reality is what's right in front of you. Doesn't mean it's not happening out here, but it's here. You have to get macro, not you have to get micro, not macro.
Cool. And you brought up timelines and converging, diverging. Have you heard much about the Looking Glass project?
Only that I've heard the name. I haven't heard a whole lot about it. No.
It and I may not. It's related to a lot of things you've been saying, and I may not tell the story accurately. But it was there was a military insider who I heard it from, and what it was a device in which I suppose the elite. I think that's how he put it. The elites, so or the elites are. This is as far as I'll go, but they were able to not necessarily look into the future, but look into possible timelines. And there was a certain point, and he gave the date of 2012. That it was at this point of 2012 where this the timelines converged to a point in the sense that no matter what they tried to do to create chaos, suppression, and division, the opposite effect always occurred. And I'd actually made a TikTok about it. It was about the TikTok ban, where not yeah where it seemed like behind the scenes they're pulling the strings to be able to control our algorithms a little more, maybe suppress some speech a little more, and divide people or suppress people. But since um, the people were like, what? I'm sorry, let me back up. The ban was, they said that the ban was because China was stealing our information and using it for whatever. So the people were like, whatever, we know you're taking our information anyway and doing with it whatever you're doing. So many people went over to Red Note, the Chinese app. And in doing that, they started talking to just Chinese citizens and seeing all the things that they had in common, saw America from someone else's eyes, saw China for what it is rather than what we've been taught it is, and just started sharing their lives. And everybody was so enthusiastic, the Chinese, the Americans, and it was like we'd all found long lost siblings. And we realized, we're starved for connection in that way. And then that led to World Talk, and all the countries, everybody's now talking and sharing and saying, America, we're with you. Yes, you may be in a mess right now, but we're almost like they're protesting for us sometimes. And the point is, what they wanted to do, the opposite effect happened. And it just brought me back to that project Looking Glass, just like he was saying. It's like there's an example of it there. Just they can, it doesn't matter what they try to do, the light has already won. It's just like just hang on, just stay in alignment while you can, and things are fine.
Yes, as long as you're choosing to focus on that, because
Yeah.
the light can't exist without the dark, right? So there
Right.
always has to be balance. This universe is built on duality, so you can't have one without the other. It's where you choose to focus, but the dark is there to balance, right? So yeah, I agree with you 100% that there's this movement towards things, and even Bashar says that, well, people who are more on the path of awakening will find themselves called to move. And then suddenly you'll be in a neighborhood full of people like this. And it's nothing you planned. It's just you're drawn there. And that many people, those of us in this community that are going through this, I've heard this over and over and over, and I feel it myself, a draw to get back to a sense of small community, having a little place with like a goat and a farm and being self-sustaining, and then going to farmers market and having a neighbor, like all of these things that we have solely missed in our society, we're all being drawn back to that. But I've noticed a clear divide between the people who are feeling that, the people who are awakening and that sort of stuff, and the people who are not, are still tangled up in all the mess that's going on in the world, and they're not focused at all on how they're going to take care of themselves or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's right on. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it gives me a lot of hope. But um, if there's anything you could, because I love the message that you have over across the board with your TikTok content and everything like that. But if there's one thing, because we're coming close to the hour, one message you'd want to leave people with that you think is important for in general for everybody to hear, what would that be?
So I think the biggest hang up people have is they don't feel special enough to have access to whatever this spirituality is. But I would like to challenge people with this. Maybe what makes you special is the fact that you're aware that it's there. If you think about how many people are walking around oblivious to all that's available to them, it does make you very special that you're aware of it. So just by the virtue of knowing it's there, you are certainly special enough to access it. So don't get in your head and say you have to earn it. It is freely given, always with love. It's just up to you to let it in.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
So I have a Patreon channel that is just under Consciously Erin. That's where you can find all of the PDFs that I put out. It's only $5 for a membership, and that gives you access to new PDF downloads every month. They cover various topics, starting from what is a spiritual awakening all the way through quantum physics, and each new ones are added each month. It gives you first sign up for classes, book clubs, and town hall. So that's the easiest place to find me. I would like to book a private session. The name of my business is Conscious Chrysalis. So they can go to consciouschrysalis.net and set it up that way.
All right. Well, Erin, thank you for being here. I'll put all that information in the show notes, and hopefully we've got some people reaching out to you. But thank you so much for being my guest.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a wonderful joy. I appreciate it. Thank you for the pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, have a good evening.
Thanks.